Morning, everyone, and welcome. Before we start our formal program, we are going to begin with an awards program today, and we are very pleased to honor recipients of the 14th Annual State Land Board Awards. The awards recognize responsible, sustainable stewardship of Oregon's natural resources. Since 2004, the Land Board has given 31 awards to people and organizations across the entire state for their extra effort, vision, and dedication to the great state of Oregon. Award winners have come from all geographic regions, from Northeast Oregon to the Central Coast, large cities to rural communities, and the Willamette Valley to Southern Oregon. Awards have gone to watershed councils, private landowners, a port, small nonprofits, government agencies, large environmental organizations, and law enforcement groups. Honored projects have been supported by an array of partnerships and funding sources. This year's awards feature artwork by Northwest Glass artist Ann Kavanaugh. We hope that the award recipients enjoy their beauty as much as we do. I think everybody's vying to get one of these. I especially want to thank everyone for joining us today and for traveling to Salem to be a part of the award ceremony. For today's recognition, State Treasurer Reed and Secretary of State Richardson will each present an award, and we'll take photos of each group after their award is presented. So first, I'd like to have Treasurer Reed come up to present the first award.
Thank you, Governor. I'm pleased to present the 2017 Stream Project Award for the Willamette Confluence Restoration Project. Spearheaded by the Nature Conservancy, this project restored an area along the Willamette River near Eugene that was historically mined for gravel. It's impressive how much work the Conservancy and their partners were able to accomplish since they purchased the property in 2010. In 2014, they completed the Pudding Ponds project, which created off-channel habitat on 130 acres and including planting 150,000 trees and shrubs. In 2016, they enhanced 174 acres and replanted 64 acres of floodplain forest at the Coast Fork, Turtle Flats area. And in 2017, restoration of the lower Middle Fork enhanced 330 acres, included planting on 151 acres of floodplain forest and another 39 acres of prairie. In addition to all that restoration work, the project team focused on ways to reduce both costs and their carbon footprint. No materials for the project were imported or exported. Their goal was to make creative use of materials that were recycled on site, from reusing quarry rock to salvaging topsoil from old mining operations. Overall, the project restored 630 acres of the floodplain and improved 3.5 miles of side channels for a total cost of approximately $6.5 million. The project was supported financially and through in-kind assistance from a variety of partners, including NOAA Fisheries, Meyer Memorial Trust, the Bonneville Power Administration, and the Bonneville Environmental Foundation, the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, the U.S. Geological Survey, Portland General Electric, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and many other private contributors to whom we are all grateful. About 250 volunteers from the Friends of Buford Park and Mount Pisgah participated in 15 different work parties, totaling more than 2,600 work hours, and I am just impressed by that number alone. So I want to now ask the representatives of the Willamette Confluence Restoration Project, please come forward to accept this award. From the Nature Conservancy, Melissa Olson, Eric Wold, and Jason Knuckles. From the NOAA Restoration Center, Megan Hilgert and Jill Ori, and from OEB, Andrew Dutterer and Liz Redon. Please.
Partnership Award is given to organizations for outstanding service that contributes to the state Department of State Lands mission and the day-to-day work. This year's Partnership Award goes to 10 Mile Lakes Basin Partnership, a group that always goes above and beyond to help our staff do their work in the 10 Mile Lakes region. Since 1994, the partnership has been a major contributor for improving the health of 10 Mile Lakes watershed in Coos County. Their work has supported many of the DSL's core programs, from regulatory work to waterway management to the ownership of the Elliott State Forest. In her nomination, DSL employee Jerry Hudson summed up the partnership's importance to the agency. Quote, "They are the eyes and ears on the ground, and we rely very much on the two-way communications and interactions with their members." Now, assistance they've provided includes checking out complaints in the area, and they also provide boat transportation for DSL staff on the lake. Specific examples of their good work include the installation of 2 miles of fencing along Big Creek in the Elliott State Forest, launching a project to collect data on the Pacific Lamprey, taking the lead on implementing DEQ's total maximum daily load and the process for all stakeholders, and developing a pilot project for water quality. DSL serves as a non-voting member of the 10 Mile Lakes Board, which allows the department to see firsthand how successful they interact with a wide variety of the organizations. Now, some of the organizations that include landowners, businesses, homeowners associations, tribes, the city of Lakeside, nonprofits, and state agencies, all within this region. 10 Mile Lakes Basin Partnership truly embodies the spirit of Land Board Participation Award. And now I'd like to ask the representatives here today to please come forward to accept this award. Fred Larson, Chair of the 10 Mile Lakes Basin Partnership, Mike Mader, the coordinator, and also Richard Litz, the monitoring coordinator.
All right, so we've got something new and different for you today. Today I am very pleased to present the first ever award for a DSL staffer who goes above and beyond to help the Common School Fund. And we're going to be giving out the Common School Fund Champion Award whenever an employee does something extraordinary or maybe just does their job thoroughly and finds much needed revenue for the fund. So the story is, in October of 2015, DSL received an application from Silverton Rock Farm for the release of approximately 63 acres of subsurface mineral and geothermal rights held by the Land Board. The applicant had recently purchased the property in order to develop a rock quarry, and of course, they thought they had purchased all the mineral rights as well. DSL staffer Jerry Hudson became aware of the situation while reviewing land use notices from Marion County, which I'm sure she does in her free time, and informed the landowner of the state's subsurface ownership. It was discovered that the state's mineral rights were dropped from the land title in the 1940s, but it took an eagle-eyed staffer to see this mistake and correct it to the benefit of the Common School Fund. DSL proposed to lease the property to Silverton Rock Farm, but eventually the agency settled on selling the subsurface mineral rights to them. So today we are honoring Jerry Hudson, proprietary coordinator, for finding $50,000 for the Common School Fund. Woo-hoo-hoo! Just as a record note, this is enough money to fund a teacher's salary for a year. So, Jerry, come on up, and thank you so much. You didn't know this was coming. Congratulations and great work. Thank you. All right. And so one last recognition before we get started on our meeting agenda. I want to recognize an important person, and Julie Curtis, the department's public relations manager, is retiring from state government effective the end of this month. Much of Julie's career in state government was with the Oregon Tourism Commission, where she served as their assistant director for over 15 years. She has worked for the Department of State Lands for over 12 years, and highlights from her time here include the new Carissa wreck removal. I'm sure that was very exciting. Overseeing DSL's involvement in the Oregon 150 celebration, known as the Sesquicentennial, as well as media relations and the annual Land Board Awards. I have to say, Julie, thank you on behalf of the state of Oregon and behalf of the Land Board. Thank you for your truly extraordinary service to the state of Oregon. There we go. And I wasn't kidding about the glass awards that everybody's vying for. She gets one of those as well. Congratulations. Oh, you get this. All right, I think we're back to our regularly scheduled program, and I'm going to go ahead and open the June 12th, 2018 Land Board meeting and turn it over to Director Walker.
Thank you, Governor Brown, Secretary Richardson, so glad you're with us today, and Treasurer Reed. What a joy that was to see all those awards happen, and I have to tell you that it was really hard to find one of those art pieces for Julie without her knowing about it, because she keeps them under lock and key. But we were able to do that, and the awards were tremendous. I actually learned to water ski on 10 Mile Lake as I was going to high school in Reedsport, and of course I live in Lane County. And certainly what Jerry has done for the Common School Fund has been what we know that all of our employees are dedicated to doing. So thank you for taking time out to do that. We have a very busy agenda today, so I'll try to run through as quickly as we can while giving adequate time to look through these agenda items. We have our first set of items in the consent agenda, and item number 1 is approval of the minutes from the February 13 State Land Board meeting. And unless you have no objections.
We'll take a motion on approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I move approval of the minutes.
Treasurer Reed moves approval of the minutes from the April 10th, 2000 and I think it was 2017?
No.
I think it's 2018 Land Board meeting.
Oh,
Yes.
did I say February?
You did?
No, I don't know, but I know in the minutes it says 2017, and as I recall, it is still 2018. So is there any objection to the
It
motion?
was April 10th.
Any objection? No. Hearing and seeing none, so ordered. Okay, moving on to consent
Yeah.
item number 2.
Nothing like screwing up on the first one. All right, item 2, this is a fairly easy one. This is whether the State Land Board should approve a request from the Oregon Department of Transportation for a perpetual bridge crossing and associated submerged operations cable easement to maintain the bridge crossing the Youngs Bay. If anyone's been in Clatsop County, they know where that bridge is. The appropriate constitutional, administrative rules and statutory authorities are cited for you. The bridge carries Highway 101 over Youngs Bay between Astoria and Warrenton. There are repairs that are being proposed for the drawbridge section. The majority of this crossing is within city limits, and therefore a compensatory payment of $100 was paid for the easement area. That's a lot of money to come from ODOT, but I think they can handle it. So it's the Department of State Lands recommends that the State Land Board approve the perpetual easement 60843 to the Oregon Department of Transportation for the bridge crossing and associated submerged operations cable to maintain and operate the bridge and cables for right-of-way purposes on, over, and under the Youngs Bay Bridge.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Secretary Richardson moves staff recommendation on item number 2. Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing none, so ordered.
All right, we'll move right along to item number 3, whether the State Land Board should direct the department to determine whether any interest remains vested in the state of Oregon with respect to historically filled lands on the Chetco River from River Mile 0 to River Mile 11, which is about 1 mile upstream from the mouth of Elk Creek. The authorities are cited below. In 2015, the legislature passed Senate Bill 912 to direct the Department of State Lands to determine whether any interest remains or is vested in the state of Oregon with respect to historically filled lands. The legislature then provided funding, that was good, to the department to begin reviewing historically filled lands on state-owned waterways. The department drafted several initial reviews for waterways in western Oregon, including the Chetco River in Curry County. This will be the first waterway where we're going to test out our methods to see if they're going to work well. And the initial review indicates that resolving filled lands ownership in this river will likely be uncomplicated and will therefore serve to test this process well. And as you know, as you may or may not know, we are required to complete this study by 2025 or the state will lose all claims of ownership on historically filled lands. So my recommendation is the department recommends that the board direct it to determine whether any interest remains vested in the state of Oregon with respect to historically filled lands on the Chetco River in Curry County.
Treasurer Reed, do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move approval of the recommendation.
Treasurer Reed moves approval of the consent item number 3. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing and seeing none, so ordered. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to consent item 4. Whether the land board should authorize the department to initiate the review and determination for the potential land, subsurface mineral, and geothermal rights sale of the Bear Creek property in Wallowa County. This one has a fascinating history. On June 1, 2007, then the State Land Board approved initial due diligence of the Bear Creek tract, along with 23 other isolated tracts in Baker, Union, Umatilla, and beautiful Wallowa counties. Some of those isolated tracts were sold at auction, but this particular one was held back as an in-holding for the U.S. Forest Service as the Wallowa Whitman National Forest surrounds the property. DSL staff met with the U.S. Forest Service at that time, trying to find equivalent exchange for the property. We couldn't come to an agreement. The tract is 158.2 acres of very steep forest land with limited access. Well, then what happened? In 2009 or 2010, we had a forest fire and it burned 83 acres of the property. 21 acres had serious damage, understory damage, and 62 acres received damage between 50 and 100%. We filed a claim against the Forest Service to pay us for our trees that burned, and that claim was denied. So here we are. In May of 2017, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation submitted an application to purchase the subsurface land on behalf of the Forest Service. In January, they resubmitted an application to purchase the subsurface minerals and geothermal rights for the same tract. So I asked my staff to give me some notes as to the value of the property, and it certainly was decreased in value because of the timber loss. So our recommendation is that the State Land Board authorize the department to initiate the review and determine the potential sale of the Bear Creek property with its surface, subsurface, and geothermal rights, a 158.2 acre tract in Wallowa County located at Township 1S, Range 42E, Section 16, Tax Lot 1101.
Thank you. Any discussion, any questions for the director?
Madam Chair.
Treasurer Reed.
I wonder, I hope I'm not getting ahead of my fellow members here, but I hope you will use the experience we had up to this date if we, as I expect, approve your recommendation and allow you to negotiate. Feels like that history should be a part of the negotiation you conduct.
Governor Brown, Treasurer Reed, you can count on it.
Thank you.
I am a tough negotiator, and I will certainly have this at my table when we have that conversation.
Thank you.
Is there a motion? Secretary Richardson.
Thank you. I move for acceptance of request number 4.
Secretary Richardson moves consent item agenda number 4, the staff recommendation. Any further discussion? Any objection? Hearing and seeing none, so ordered.
All right, we will move on to agenda item 5. This one's a fairly easy one. Whether the State Land Board should approve a request from the State of Oregon acting by and through the Department of Forestry on behalf of the Board of Forestry to amend the Elliott State Forest Reciprocal Easement Agreement to add a permanent easement to use the portion of the existing Elk Ridge number 1000 road. So what happened here is the reciprocal easement included portions of the Elk Ridge, but segments of the DSL-owned right-of-way in Section 13, Township 23 South, Range 10 West, WM, what does that mean?
Willamette Meridian.
Thank you. Willamette Meridian. I should have asked that question before. Anyway, it was inadvertently not included in the easement description to the Department of Forestry. So this is a very simple little fix. The Department of State Lands recommends that the State Land Board approve an amendment to the Elliott State Forest Reciprocal Easement Agreement to revise the easement description for the Elk Ridge Road number 1000 to the following. And it is listed there that we're adding Section 13. And I'm not going to read all that stuff.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Is there a motion? Treasurer Reed.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the recommendation.
Treasurer Reed moves approval of the staff recommendation on consent agenda item number 5. Hearing and seeing no objection, it's so ordered.
Great, thank you. I'll move on to the action items. Action item number 6 is whether the State Land Board should authorize the direct sale of 63.1 acres of subsurface minerals and geothermal rights in Marion County. And Madam Chair, Governor Brown, this is what you talked about, and this is why Jerry Hudson received an award. So I probably don't need to repeat all of the history behind that. I can tell you that the owner of the property sued the title company, and they received an undisclosed sum of money. And we did try to negotiate some kind of an agreement where we could share the profits of their leasing and their operation, but they did not want to do that. So we've settled on selling the property for $50,000, and the department would recommend approval of the direct sale of the subsurface minerals and geothermal rights to the surface owner located in Marion County at Township 7 South, Range 1 East, Section 7D, Tax Lot 400.
Director Walker, thanks to you and your team. Thank you, Jerry Hudson. I think you've left the room, but we really appreciate your dedication and determination. Any further discussion on this particular item? Do I have a motion?
We'll move for the request of Director's motion number 6.
Secretary Richardson moves the approval of action item number 6, request for approval of the direct sale of 63.1 acres of subsurface minerals and geothermal rights located in Marion County. Any objection? Hearing and seeing none, so ordered. Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to action item number 7, whether the State Land Board should approve the Oregon Department of Forestry's proposed Common School Fund budget for submission to the Department of Administrative Services. And I'll be asking the department to come up and address that. And when the department is done, I will make a recommendation for the Land Board to consider with regard to this budget. As you know, we've had some issues, and I believe those got resolved, and I will let the department explain all that to you.
Great, thank you. Director Doherty, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. Good morning, Governor Brown, Secretary Richardson, and Treasurer Reed. For the record, I am Peter Doherty, and I serve as the Oregon State Forester and the Director of the Department of Forestry. I'm joined today by Ron Zilli, our Acting Division Chief for State Forest, and we are here to present the 1921 biennial budget request for the management of the Common School Fund forest lands consistent with the 2017 management agreement. Our proposed budget covers management expenses for 33,073 acres of forest land located in 18 Oregon counties. We manage these common school funds for the short and long-term benefit of public schools consistent with the land management agreement between the State Land Board, Department of State Lands, and Oregon Department of Forestry. The management activities we conduct include surveys for threatened and endangered species, forest inventory, and timber sale planning and administration. We also implement reforestation and young stand management to continuously grow healthy, productive, and sustainable forests for future generations. These forests provide a range of benefits such as wood products, diverse ecosystems and habitats, and clean air and water. ODF conducts this work through a transparent public process seeking review and comment on annual operating plans, 10-year implementation plans, and longer-term forest management plans. Revenues generated from these forests are used to cover expenses associated with the land management and provide revenue to the Common School Fund. We are presenting a balanced budget where expected revenues exceed management cost. Once the proposed budget is finalized, and we do have a recommendation for your approval today, the budget will be submitted to Department of Administrative Service, and then it begins its way through the legislative process. Ron is going to walk through the request in detail, highlight the planned work on those 33,073 acres, and the expected results from the management of those lands in the coming biennium.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, Governor Brown, Secretary Richardson, Treasurer Reed. For the record, my name is Ron Zilli. I'm the Acting Deputy State Forest Division Chief for State Forests. As Peter mentioned, we're presenting a budget where expected revenues are expected to exceed management costs. We're expecting to generate approximately $6.8 million in gross revenues in the next biennium, and that would come from a harvest of approximately 13.6 million board feet of timber. The proposed budget we need to do that work is about $4.8 million, which includes fire patrol assessments of approximately $950,000 for all common school forest lands, including the Elliott, that are invoiced separately to the Department of State Lands from our Fire Protection Division. The budget will result in a positive cash flow to the Common School Fund of approximately $1.9 million over the biennium. The budget covers fractional positions totaling 9.1 full-time positions. These positions are primarily in our field offices around the state that carry out the land management functions associated with the activities on those lands. There are also portions of positions in our area and Salem headquarters offices that perform a variety of functions associated with financial accounting, log accountability, sale processing, as well as resource specialists with expertise in fish, wildlife, and roads, the types of skills that are needed across the state to effectively manage these lands. Those are some of the details I wanted to point out about our budget. The agency request budget is 48% higher than the 17-19 legislatively adopted budget. There's a few reasons for this difference. The previous budget did not include adequate fire patrol assessments for the Elliott State Forest, anticipating that a new landowner would be paying those assessments for some portion of the biennium. The administrative costs were artificially low due to an error in the calculations in the spreadsheet doing that work, and that error has been corrected. The personal services costs were reduced, resulting in insufficient funding for the existing positions dedicated to managing the common school forest lands, and we've included a policy option package of approximately $535,000 to correct the personal services budget. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Madam Governor,
Secretary Richardson.
I'm starting to get my mind around the expectation of not exceeding the management costs when we really should be trying to promote the maximum return on recovery and on investment. So I'm hoping that we would be able to consider having an RFP or an RFI where we're looking at the management costs and expecting maybe a greater return on investment.
Okay. Treasurer Reed.
Madam Chair, to pick up on the Secretary's question, I'm not sure whether the question is best directed to you or to Director Walker, but I wonder, setting aside the sort of anomalous factors you already articulated, how would you characterize the general trend of the expenses and how, this is the part that might be better for Director Walker, how that might compare to other options that the land board might have?
Well, to defer to Director Walker, she'd like to field that.
She's right on the other side, there you are.
Yeah. Thank you, Treasurer Reed. I was hoping the Department of Forestry would be able to tell you what their expenses are in percentages. I had my staff run it this morning. Based on how we calculated, it seemed lower than I expected. But as I was studying this last night, I went down in my archives, which is the basement of my apartment building, and pulled out my 1999 budget notebook. When I chaired the Natural Resources Subcommittee, and this DSL was in my subcommittee. And at the time, it was reported that the usual and customary expenses would be 30 to 35%, but that they had grown to 40 to 50% of the cost. So given their budget and having just received it, I really can't give you a very straight answer on that question. But as part of my recommendation, I'll talk about what we should do next.
Thank you.
Director Doherty, I don't know if you can respond, or Ron, if you can respond to what the percentage has been of administrative costs in terms of the budget over the last couple of biennia. I don't know if you have that data, but I think all of us would be interested in seeing that data.
Governor Brown, what do you mean by administrative costs? A total management cost or just,
In terms of the, what you're overseeing in terms of the Common School Fund.
okay, so rough off my head, we're generating $7 million. We're costing $4.8 million. We have a net of around $2 million. So that's close, that's over 50%. It's
Okay.
more like 60%.
Okay.
Just rough numbers off the top of my head.
Okay.
Which includes the fire protection.
Yeah, that includes fire protection. And so we'd have to do more calculations just for the 33,000 acres, because 600,000 of that cost that I just included in the calculations for the Elliott, which we're not managing. The return on asset value roughly is about 1.4%.
Thank you. I don't know that we have any other questions or comments. Thank you. Director Walker, do you want to join us back at the dais, please?
Thank you, Governor, and my staff reminded me that that notebook I looked at was from 2009, not 1999. Though I think I probably still have 1999
as well.
stuff in my archives as well. My staff has threatened to go clean out my storage unit next time I go somewhere. I appreciate the Department of Forestry and the service they provide for us. But I've been quite frustrated by this budget, and I think you know that. So here's my recommendation. I don't know if the costs, the management costs, are within the ballpark, or if we could do better. So I would recommend, and I'll state it in the form of a motion, I would recommend that we go ahead and approve this budget as presented, which puts the budget in the budget process, because it's a lengthy process to go through DAS, but that the land board also allow me the opportunity to run a request for information or a request for proposal to see if there are any independent logging companies out there or counties we might partner with to manage these forest lands in these 18 counties. I think it's worth asking the question. I did ask the previous director, Jim Paul, whether he had attempted that and whether he had considered it, and he said he had strongly considered it. So I think it's time to take action. You asked me to be a change agent here and to look at everything in this agency. I'm trying to find the best way to run the program at low cost, keeping in mind our fiduciary responsibility. So if I can run that information and we can get information back, I can present it to the land board in August or even October. And I asked our counsel, Matt DeVore, to tell me what our agreements are with the Forest Service. We have 2 of them and 3 sub-agreements. And the main agreement we have with them allows us to cancel their contract with 90 days notice. So I believe we can move the budget forward, and I can look at these other options, and we can still cancel the contract down the road if that's what the land board would like to do. So,
Just a record correction, I assume you meant the Department of Forestry, not the Forest Service.
oh, again, I made a mistake. Yes, I
Okay.
did mean the Department of Forestry. Thank you.
Secretary Richardson, Treasurer Reed, your thoughts?
Madam Chair, I think that what the director has outlined makes sense to me. I would not presume to know what the results of that inquiry will reveal. I think it would be important for this board to be able to consider that, but it seems to me we'd be in a stronger position with more information, so I would support the recommendation.
Okay. Thank you. Secretary Richardson? I am fine. I suspect that other directors at other times have had this similar conversations. I think it's worth revisiting. I am concerned, and you, I think, will be as well after you receive the fire briefing this afternoon of the impact, the potential, shall we say, wildfire season that we are facing. And I want to make sure that we are not being penny wise and pound foolish. And that we are guaranteeing adequate protection to the extent that we can, given changing weather conditions and what we anticipate was going to be a very challenging fire season. And frankly, they've been challenging consistently for the last several years. So just want to make sure we're not being penny wise and pound foolish. So, I think, I don't know if you need a formal motion, but I think it's acceptable to the board members for you to review alternatives in terms of management offers and come back to the land board at the August meeting. Is that satisfactory with everyone? Treasurer Reed's nodding his head, Secretary Richardson's nodding his head, and I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So you will, I think, is there a motion to
Approve the budget.
Yeah, so I'll make the recommendation, and so the motion is easier. The Department of Forestry and the Department of State Lands recommend that the State Land Board approve the submission of ODF's 2019-2021 current service level CSF budget to the Department of Administrative Services as part of the department's total budget, with recognition that there may be policy option packages that will cause an increase to ODF's agency budget request.
Okay.
Madam Chair, move approval of the recommendation.
Thank you, Treasurer Reed. He moves approval of the staff recommendation. Hearing and seeing no objection, so approved. Thank you.
And then, Governor, I will just take forward the advice of the Land Board and go about finding alternatives. I don't think there's a motion necessary for that. Matt?
I don't believe there's one necessary. I think you've
I
heard
think
from
we're
the
fine.
land board that they have approved that direction.
Okay.
And it doesn't require a specific motion.
I think we're fine.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, now we're into the exciting part of the day, too. We're going to go on to agenda item 8, which is something everyone looks forward to. We are going to get an updated annual report on the Common School Fund investments and distributions. And Aaron, I believe we have some folks joining us by phone and some folks here that will be at the table. So I'll ask them to come forward at this time.
Good
Morning. For the record, my name is Janet Becker-Wold. I'm the investment consultant to the Oregon Investment Council, and Mike Bateri and the Oregon Treasury staff had retained Callan to revise the distribution study that we presented to the land board about this time last year. So that's
Thank
what
you.
we're here to do today.
All right, thank you and welcome.
We have a presentation. I don't intend on going through every slide, but I do want to start with just one and we do have my colleague Julia Moriarty is on the phone. She is the one of our quantitative types who actually did the modeling for this. So if you have any specific questions regarding the modeling, I will ask Julia to opine. We also have Mike Bateri on the line from the Oregon State Treasury.
Great.
Okay, and with me is Perrin Lim from Treasury.
Great, thank you.
So just a clarification on the memo that Mike Bateri distributed to the land board. One minor clarification. In the red text on this, where he discusses when there will be no distributions, it was on the distribution study provided by, I think this came out under John Shervum's letterhead. There's one clarification. In the memo he issued, it states that there would be a zero transfer to Senate Bill 1566 distributions in 40% of outcomes, and that's actually 30% of outcomes. The 40 refers to a distribution less than the receipts from the unclaimed property in the previous year. So that means that in 30% of the time of the outcomes, there's no distribution, but 70% of the time there is one. And in 40%, it's less than the previous year. Okay, I'm sorry, it's confusing, and as we go through the analysis, I think it'll be clearer. The important thing to know is that there is a 30% probability that you will not have a distribution to 1566 based on the current asset allocation. Okay, so let's turn to page 2 of this presentation. Do we do that ourselves?
Yes, just like that figure right there.
I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do it.
These more reviews side to side. Backwards and front.
Okay, so that one goes forward. Okay. Sorry, I had to get a little
And then if
tutoring
you
on
need,
the.
if you need to point this out.
Okay, I don't.
Your green is on it.
Okay. Okay, so now we'll start on page 1. So the goal of the study was really to update what Callan had done last year, which evaluated the current distribution policy and the new asset allocation. And if you recall, the current policy is that you distribute 4% of the rolling 3-year previous average market value in any given year, except when the market value grows by greater than 11% and you distribute 5%. And last year, when we did the analysis, we suggested to the land board that a constant 4% as opposed to an occasional 5% was more prudent in terms of the sustainability of the distributions and the mission of the intergenerational equity. Excuse me. So this year, we're here to update it for the inclusion of the now new distributions for the Senate Bill 1566 passed earlier this year. So when we do this study, we look at 3 different components. We look at the contributions, the distributions, and the investments. And we've already dealt with the investments last year with the council, where we modified the asset allocation to include real assets and diversifying strategies that more closely mirrors what the council is doing on the PERS fund. We felt that that was a more efficient asset allocation. It was a risk-reducing measure as well as a stabilization measure for distributions. So you can kind of see that in the schematic on page 2 that just shows the 3 primary components of the study. We've already done the investment policy. The contributions are what they are. They come from unclaimed property and other land sources. And now we're going to talk about that blue box, which is the distribution policy. I'm going to skip this page. This just kind of shows you a very broad overview of how we do the modeling. So we build the model and then we test it with the asset projections. So what we want you to know is that we've taken not only your current policy, the 4 and 5, but we've modeled in this analysis multiple distribution policies so we can see what the outcomes are. On the right-hand side, we use the asset projections that Callan generates with your current asset allocation, and we vary that through a Monte Carlo simulation to find a variety of economic environments to test your asset allocation in terms of its performance. And then we bring those together at the end and try to define the risk tolerance and select an appropriate target mix. So we have the mix. So we're going to go to page 5. Page 5 kind of outlines the heart of the study, if you will. The fund has approximately $1.7 billion in assets as of the end of the year of 2017. The pie represents the current target allocation with 55% to public equity, 45% to public equity and 10% to private, so 55% total equity. 25% in fixed income, 10% in real estate, and 10% to diversifying strategies, and that's represented in this pie chart. Below the pie chart, importantly, shows the expected return of this fund, of this asset allocation is 6.5%, and the expected risk is defined by standard deviation of returns is 13.4. This is important because this is an input into the distribution study. The distribution in recent years has been between 4 and 5%, depending on the previous 3 years. As we mentioned, you have a 4% if it's less than 11, 5 if you're over. And we also use the projected growth to include a 0.7% student population growth, because we want to keep pace with student population growth. And we want to use inflation, so we want real growth in the corpus in excess of student population growth to keep the intergenerational equity mission intact. We used an assumption of net unclaimed property inflows of $32.5 million in 2018, and that is expected to grow by 2.5% per year. We've also made some assumptions on the expenses at about $7.5 million, so the net unclaimed property flows in any given year are expected to be about $25 million. So the study focused on the difference between last year and this year was the outflows beyond the distribution policy that included the new 1566 distribution to the school district unfunded liability fund. So that was a new flow that was going out. So the purpose of the study was to test whether the current distribution policy, given this new flow out, is sustainable. On page 6, we show the current distribution policy. I'll skip over that. The chart on the bottom just gives you an illustration of what that looks like. I think you're very familiar with that. And we'll move to Senate Bill 1566, which is really at the heart of this. So this bill was passed earlier this year, and what you can see on this page, we've written exactly the wording from the legislation from the Senate bill. The important thing to note is that the distribution is the lesser of the total unclaimed property net of investment earnings, or of investment earnings, less the net outflow from the inflow from the unclaimed property from the previous year. Okay, so you have the lesser of. So if your investment earnings are less than the earnings from the unclaimed property, or the incoming unclaimed property in the previous year, then you have to do the lesser of the two. So if the fund returns a negative return, you do not have any distribution for 1566. Okay, so the earnings have to exceed or equal the inflows from the unclaimed property in the previous year. So that's kind of the formula, and it gets kind of messy when you put it into modeling, but. So that's how you get in certain years, because the look back for the 1566 distribution is only 1 year. The variability in returns in any 1 year is a lot higher than the rolling 3, that is the common school fund distribution. So there's a lot more volatility in the 1566 distribution because of that 1 year look back as opposed to the rolling 3. Should I pause? Does that make sense so far? Okay. So what we've done now in the next couple of pages is we're showing you what happens with these various variables moving around. So this page 8, shows the real assets based on the current distribution policies, so the 4 and 5, and the current target allocation, and says what do the real assets look like here. And again, we've included the student population growth and a 2.25% assumption for inflation. You can see by these lines, in each of these lines, the different color lines represent a different part of the distribution of the outcomes. So you can see the very top line is the 5th percentile, which means you've had very good returns, and so the fund grows very rapidly. And the percentage numbers at the far right-hand side represent the compounded 20-year annual return. So you can see in a very good outcome, you have very rapid growth and strong growth in the real assets under your current distribution and the target asset allocation. The black line, which you can barely see because it overlaps with the median line, is the 50th percentile, which is what kind of the median expectation is what we expect, is that you see that the blue line, the 50th, starts to trail below the beginning market value.
That's what I think.
Because this includes 1566 distributions. And you can see in the rather negative outcomes, the 75th and 95th percentile, that you see it trailing off pretty significantly. Page 9 shows the real distributions, and these are only for the common school fund distributions based on the current distribution policy and the target asset allocation. And again, the scale on this is quite large, so you can't really see how much the median is starting to kind of trail off. And again, it's the same story, is that you see real distributions actually start to decline under your current distribution policy. And this is kind of what we showed you last year. The important page in our mind is page 10, which is the median real assets. Now this varies the distribution policy and includes both the common school fund distributions and the 1566 distributions at the current target asset allocation. So now we're looking at the median over different distribution rates. So you can see there's a 3% rate. That's the green line that rises rapidly because you're paying out less. The fund can grow more. The red line that falls right below that is a 3.5% distribution rate. Again, you can see that it rises, but it kind of flattens out importantly. And we believe that that flattening out shows us that the 3.5% creates a period of stability in the distributions that's sustainable for both the 1566 distributions and the Common School Fund distributions. You can see the beginning market value, and then you can see the negative outcomes there, or the higher distribution rates, the 4 and the current really tail off pretty dramatically. And so you can see that over the long run, a 3.5%, a maximum 3.5% distribution is what we think is sustainable to maintain the corpus of the fund and the intergenerational equity requirements. So on the last page, we just summarized that with the passage of 1566, the real value of the fund is expected to gradually decline over 20 years under the current distribution policy and under a flat 4% distribution rate, okay, applied to the three-year average market value. Our projections indicate that a 3.5% would be the maximum distribution that you could sustain and maintain the corpus of the fund. And we just wanted to note that we only used our 10-year expectations for the entire 20-year forward period. So we're kind of saying that 3.5 is probably more sustainable and more true to the mission of the fund than the current 4 to 4.5.
I would note just one thing as well, that that's the target asset allocation. You're not quite there yet. It's going to take some time to allocate to real estate, the real assets, and the diversifying strategy. So that may be 1 year, maybe 2 years. Excuse me. So that isn't fully implemented.
Okay. I'm like, here. I wouldn't trust my throwing arm that far. Secretary Richardson, Treasurer Reed, comments?
Madam Chair, I would just say thanks to Perrin and to Janet. This is very consistent with the kind of information we get at the Investment Council. These are two very talented and experienced people. I think the point that Perrin just made bears repeating, and perhaps a little more color. We don't want to make an undue or overly quick move to the target. It makes sense to take advantage of opportunities. So that's why it will take some time to get to that target. And while how our portfolio is often not exactly on the target, the timelines of those kinds of transactions don't exactly line up to the decisions that groups like ours make. So the modeling that they've done is not perfectly in line with where the portfolio is now, but we'll get there. And I heard a very clear recommendation about 3.5% as the maximum. So I'm ready to make a motion when you're ready.
Secretary Richardson.
Thank you. I fully agree that we need to ensure that good times and bad times, brilliance is a rising market, but there needs to be consistency, and we need to have equity, generational equity, so that we don't burden the rising generation. So anyway, I agreed as well.
Treasurer Reed, I think we're ready for a motion. The data's really clear. So it's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned.
Glad to hear it, Governor. So I would move to accept the recommendation of 3.5% as maximum. And if I'm not going too far, it seems appropriate also to ask for consideration of what sort of a policy we should adopt as the distribution of that 3.5%, both to include the 1566 fund. So the makeup of that distribution probably bears additional analysis, and we could ask for that assistance.
That'd be great. Everybody in accord? I see a head nodding from Secretary Richardson. I'm in accord, so Treasurer Reed, your motion passes with unanimity. So thank you very much. We really appreciated the presentation and the depth of your expertise on this issue. It was very helpful. Thank you.
Very much.
Director Walker.
I have so many extra things in my notebook I've got to manage. So here we go. Agenda item 9. These are, this is the Department of State Lands budget proposal, our request that will be submitted to Department of Administrative Services. And we have several policy option packages within that. As you know, our budget supports a focus on regional delivery of services by utilizing its resources in a team-based environment. And I have to tell you, my 3 months here, has it been 4 months now? I don't know, I've lost track of time when you're having fun. This staff is just excellent, and I've enjoyed working with them. And they're all looking at ways to save money. We have some pretty major things still in our budget that just aren't going to disappear for a while. The Portland Harbor Superfund site. We have our historically filled lands project and other things. So with that in mind, it does seem like a lot, but they're really, some of those things are things that are ongoing and they're just not going to go away for a while. So I will start with Policy Option Package 101. As I mentioned, the Portland Harbor Fund Superfund site. We have a lot of defense expenses with regard to that. This package seeks to continue the Natural Resource Specialist 4 as a limited duration position and to fund estimated legal and environmental consulting costs and continue to ensure the state's interests are protected in the Superfund case. Those legal expenses are estimated by the Department of Justice to be $6.4 to $7.1 million, and currently my understanding is those are being covered by insurance policies. At some point that will disappear, but for now we'll gladly take the insurance coverage. The limited duration specialist position is $235,000 of that policy option package. Package 102 is the waterway insurance package, and that's connected to the agency's legislative concept that would allow the agency to purchase insurance to protect our interests in property that is leased and pass on that cost of the policy to the leaseholders. This arises from the Global Oregon Global Cleanup Site. It's very confusing, global and global. But that cleanup ended up costing us $12 million, and I shudder whenever I utter those words. So we are looking at a concept that we can purchase insurance and then sell it, make it available to our leaseholders. If that doesn't work, we're looking at some other options, but that's a placeholder. We're moving through with it, and you all approve that legislative concept. So I just want you to know it's in our package to find budget for that. I also will tell you that we are looking internally at our policies with regard to our leaseholders and how often we check up on them. So stay tuned as we research that more thoroughly. Package 103 is the system replacement cost for our land administration system that was created in 1999, and like all good computer systems, they start to die after a while, and this one is no longer being serviced, so we have to update it. Everything is done on our computer these days. Cash receipts, GIS mapping, imaging, everything we do here is done on this system. That cost is $486,776, and the IT project manager portion of it is $286,000, and the professional services are $200,000. Package 104 is actually an EPA grant carry forward. So the department worked with other state agencies and tribal nations to develop a coordinated Oregon wetland program plan in 2011, supported by funding through EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, their wetland program development grant. That plan was updated in January of last year. It provides a strategic framework and direction over a 5-year period for the agency, the state, the federal government, and our tribal partners to build and strengthen and improve the state's ability to better manage aquatic resources. This proposal will build on that work and it will allow better decision-making in light of climate change and protection of the waters of the state. So this small grant is a carryover, and it's only $113,193. And I say only. For my budget at home, that's a lot of money, but for a state budget, that's not a great amount. Package 105 is the Elliott State Forest management work. This package will continue a limited duration forester position that we had on the street, and I don't know if we've hired yet. But that forester is needed to manage the Elliott State Forest and the Titan Kelly contract, as well as to tell us what to do with the other 39,000 acres of common school forest lands that lie outside the Elliott. We know that currently ODF is managing 33,000 of those acres, but we have about 6,000 that are just sitting there. We need to figure out what to do with them, and we need to take a look at what is in the best interest of the Common School Fund, recommending selling or harvesting. Package 106 is the Filled Lands Positions and Online Mapping Tool. This again arises out of Senate Bill 912 from the 2015 legislature, charging the department to inventory the historically filled lands. As I mentioned earlier, we have to get that done before 2025. That package is $798,813. The natural resource specialist and administrative assistant in that package is $244,000, and the project professional IT services are $555,000 as an estimate. Package 107 is the project manager for procurements and project management. This has been a limited duration position for a while, and I have to tell you, we want to convert this to a permanent position. We need this contract manager on staff full-time. There are so many special projects this agency has. I'm constantly calling upon her to run a contract for this, look at running a contract for that, and for managing what we're doing on the Elliott with regard to the HCP, the Habitat Conservation Plan. So we think it's of value to turn that into a permanent position for $277,295. Package 108 and the next 3 packages are all related to the South Slough. This particular one is the South Slough Reserve has a need for a continual staff position related to GIS research mapping and management of data. They've had a part-time person and it's just not doing it for them. They really need to have someone full-time permanently in this position. That's $97,304, and I will also tell you what I learned in my 2009 budget notebook that I looked at last night. Did you know that NOAA selected the South Slough Reserve for a nationwide climate reference network and planted a climate monitoring station in Frederickson Marsh in 2008 to watch for long-term trends in climate change, and they've done this in 100 locations across the North America, and it's out. I saw the station when I went on a trip, but I quite didn't understand what it was till I read my budget notebook again last night. So I'm very tickled about the South Slough being a part of that climate change network. Package 109 is a grant carry forward for the South Slough. This package requests other funds grants to be carried forwarded to the 2019-21 biennium. These funds consist of a NOAA federal construction grant, which is funding several facilities upgrades to the South Slough Interpretive Center. I've seen their deck. It's becoming dangerous. They need to replace it. That total amount is federal funds of $137,000 and then other funds of $58,714, and those other funds are statutory. Package 110 is a very, very small amount of money, but this requests a permanent seasonal position for the education staff of the South Slough Reserve. I've been there when there are kids that come for the programming. The programming is incredible. They offer over 200 educational programs. The summer is their most intense time of the year, and the spring, when the kids are starting to get out of the classroom and they come by the bus loads. The focus of this position has been historically filled by an intern through AmeriCorps, and the focus of that program has changed. So we need to backfill that with other funds, $27,231. It's not a significant ask. Package 111 is the Ocean Science Trust, and the director of that trust, Louise Soliday, the former director.
She's making a guest appearance. She's right behind you. So welcome. It's good to see you.
She's here to answer any questions if you have any about that. And, you know, I will make a statement that all of us here are former legislators. We all serve together, and we know what the legislature sometimes does, and they sometimes did that to the Oregon Ocean Science Trust. They created a program, an incredibly valuable program. They're providing all kinds of information about the nearshore, and a number of agencies are working with them. But the legislature, as they are wont to do from time to time, they set up this program without any money. And quite frankly, that should come to an end. So we've got a general fund request here for $1 million. And I understand that Senator Roblin's also going to try to run it on his side. But, you know, this bill was passed in 2013 with Senate Bill 737, which, by the way, was a good bill I had in 2009. But anyway, this is an important trust. The work they do is incredibly important. So I'm hoping that you'll support this package to ask the legislature to fund something they created. All right, we'll move on to package 112.
Director Walker, I was just checking to see who was in the legislature and voted yes on Senate Bill 737 in 2013, and I know I'm off the hook, but
So
I'm
am
looking
I.
at my colleagues, so
And I'm off the hook, so I don't know
Yes.
about the other two land board members.
they're both blushing for
They
the
are.
record. So
All right, so package 112, that one is being withdrawn. And let me tell you why. And we learned from ODOT, Oregon Department of Transportation, last week that they will not be able to fund this second liaison position. They already fund one. And so therefore, we're not going to ask for the position if no one's going to fund it. But I will tell you that my staff has made it abundantly clear that there is still a need to address the additional permitting workload, the fact that the applications will now be coming from multiple local governments, because that's the new way ODOT is going to manage this, means the workload for our permitting staff is going to increase significantly because the level of sophistication and understanding of the removal fill law varies significantly among local governments. So we're going to have to continue to work with ODOT and perhaps League of Oregon Cities and Association of Oregon Counties to see how to fund this level of service.
Director Walker, I think it would be really helpful, at least as we move into the legislative cycle, to have a sense of the permitting process and how long it takes. And with the removal of this particular position, how much more time it is likely to take during these permitting process. My guess is that'll be fairly compelling to the legislature. So,
Thank you,
but
Governor.
that data would be really helpful.
And we can certainly supply that data to you, and we'll start tracking that. Excuse me. Package 113 is a request for an unclaimed property examiner requesting a limited duration administrative specialist 1. There is an incredible workload in this department. The annual claims have nearly doubled over the past 10 years. Since 2017, the department has had a monthly average ranging from 91 to 114 days in response time to the claimants, and our legislative mandate is 120 days, so we are constantly bumping up against that. Now, I will tell you that along with the treasurer and his staff, Gene Strait, our deputy for administration, and I were both in Orlando last week at a conference that was a week-long discussion about the unclaimed property program, and the treasurer had other treasurer conferences and programs there, but we learned about the unclaimed property program. We are developing some ideas based on that in terms of efficiencies, but it's going to take us some time to do that, and we're going to need some stakeholder involvement. So I think the limited duration position will help us meet the demand at this point, and it is limited duration, so it's not permanent. Package 114 is the project we all know and love as the Elliott State Forest Public Ownership Project. The 2017 legislature approved approximately $1.5 million for work on an updated habitat conservation plan and associated planning for the work to retain public ownership of the Elliott State Forest. So the total amount here is for that $1.5 million on the HCP and limitation work for the environmental impact statement and NEPA for a total of $1.579 million. So we are at the end of all of our policy option packages, and I need to take out option 112. The Department of State Lands recommends that the Land Board approve the submission of the DSL budget, including policy option packages 101 through 111 and 112 through 114 to the Department of Administrative Services. Excuse me?
113 and 114, not 112.
We're not doing 112.
Correct.
We're going through 114. Okay, I'm hearing
Comments?
voices in the back.
Comments, questions? Treasurer Reed, I'm ready for motion.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the recommendation and the submission of the policy option packages as the director listed.
The treasurer moves approval of the submission of the DSL budget, including policy option packages 101 to 111 and 113 to 114 to the Department of Administrative Services. Any further discussion? Any objection? Hearing and seeing none, so ordered. Thank you. Thank you, Director Soliday, proof that there is life after retirement, so thank you.
She's a CASA volunteer too, which is what she's working on today between our hearing and that. So I really appreciate people who volunteer for the CASA program. And I know, Governor, you and I both have that same commitment to that program. Okay, we are at the other portion of the budget, and the only thing that I would like to tell you about is given the interest in the Jordan Cove Energy Project, I developed a memo in consultation with our esteemed counsel, Matt DeVore. We worked on that over several days, weeks, and we worked on it with my staff. I sent that memo out to you all yesterday, and it is now posted on our website, and I did that for the purpose of providing clarity to the Land Board as well as clarity to those citizens who are concerned about this project. I wanted folks to understand just exactly what the jurisdiction of our department is and what the jurisdiction of the Land Board is. And some may be surprised that you all have very little to do with this project. So this memo can be found on our website. We also made copies available today. Let me just say that in terms of the application on June 4th, Jordan Cove LNG requested the Department of State Lands suspend review of their removal fill permit application and change its status to suspended, awaiting revision. There were so many revisions that were necessary to their application, they just pulled it back and asked us to wait, and they will expect to provide additional information by August, late August. So let me, if I can just run very quickly through the permits and authorizations. I'm not going to go through all of them. I just want to say that the Department of State Lands issues two types of permits and authorizations: removal fill permits for removal or fill activity in waterways and wetlands, and proprietary authorizations. That's what that word is all about, proprietary. It's for use of state-owned uplands and waterways. Removal fill activity on state-owned waterways requires both permits and authorizations, and Jordan Cove is no exception. The state has removal fill jurisdiction, and the Land Board has directed that DSL is responsible for issuing or denying removal fill permits. The Land Board does not have any specific statutory authority over the removal fill program. So that lies all with me and my staff. And Jordan Cove Energy Project has several distinct removal fill activities and a wetland delineation report, and I'm certainly not going to go through all of those, but there are several before the agency. The state's proprietary jurisdiction, there is a discussion there about that we own the submerged and submersible lands, beds, and banks underlying all navigable and tidally influenced waterways pursuant to the equal footing doctrine. And Jordan Cove Energy Project has requested proprietary authorizations for a variety of project components, including easements, upland crossings, leasing, mitigation sites, sand and gravel, et cetera, et cetera. The Land Board has delegated authority to DSL to make decisions, including term and permanent easements. It has delegated authority to DSL to issue authorizations. And it has delegated Land Board authority for conservation easements and licenses. The only situation that the Land Board needs to intervene is the Land Board has required DSL to explicitly refer permanent conservation easements to the Land Board. And I will say that as of this time, there are none of those being requested in the Jordan Cove Energy Project application. Now, Oregon Administrative Rule also gives leeway for the director, discretion to the director, to refer unusual or controversial easement applications to the board, as well as a couple of other instances. But I will tell you, this director has no intention of doing that. This director believes that our agency, our department, our staff, is quite capable of making the decisions, and you have given me the authority to make those decisions. So, in conclusion, the Jordan Cove Energy Project has applied for various permits and authorizations that are within the jurisdiction of this department, either under the state's removal fill jurisdiction or the state's proprietary jurisdiction. For each permit and authorization that is contemplated by Jordan Cove's most recent application, the existing statutes and rules place the obligation squarely on the department and the director for deciding whether to approve or deny the application. The Land Board's role is very limited, and considering the scope of this application, as I said, I'm not inclined to refer anything to the Land Board that I don't need to. So I just want folks to understand that while they may want to come here and testify to the Land Board, it really rests with the department. And we have nothing to discuss at this moment because they have asked us to suspend that application. When they refile, we will have a 60-day public comment period. I already told Jordan Cove Energy Project that I'm going to go outside the 30 days. And I said, this is an offer you can't refuse. And they agreed that we can do the 60-day comment period because statute requires only 30 days. We will go, we had already made plans to go to Coos Bay, Canyonville, and Klamath Falls. We had already arranged all of those locations, but we canceled those when Jordan Cove asked us to suspend the application. We will also require the applicant to put their application materials in all the public libraries in the affected counties, and there's quite a few of them. But that way, the public has an opportunity to review the materials. They're also available on our website. But like many people, I get tired of sitting at a computer and I like to print paper. They can go to the library and look at the paper, and they may not even have a computer. I will tell you, having previously worked in rural Oregon for the last 8 years for President Obama, I found a lot of communities that did not have computer access. So this is one thing that we will require of the applicant should they resubmit in August. So that's all I have on that front. Mr. DeVore, did I overstate anything or misstate anything?
Nope, I think that all sounded good.
Okay, then if you have no questions, I'll stand back.
I think we have a couple of questions. Treasurer Reed.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the memo and the discussion. I reviewed it before the meeting, and then through the conversation today, I was thinking about it as two other items unrelated came up. So I want to ask, not necessarily for answer today, but for your consideration and the Department, perhaps the Department of Justice, if you can help us think through scenarios. What made me think about this was I was having the same conversation or the same confusion you were about GOBLE and global. We're thinking about the cost that we now absorb as a result of what's happened there, and thinking about the discussion about Superfund and what's happening there. So I'm thinking about the scenarios of what happens if there is a leak along the pipeline that creates pollution in a stream or a river. Thinking about a ship that docks and maybe results in a spill. Thinking about what happens after a tsunami and whether it's the land board or someone else who would need to cover those costs. So. And what that looks like if it ends up being something like Superfund that ends up in not only the cleanup costs, but the litigation costs and the effort and so on. So again, not for answer today, but would appreciate the chance to get your reactions to that, perhaps with the Department of Justice assistance. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll have a conversation about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Reed. I have two comments for consideration. One is I appreciate the extension on the 30-day public comment period. Given the extensive time frame that the folks managing the project have had, I think it's appropriate that we provide ample opportunity for the public to weigh in. And so I would certainly ask for a longer period of time for public comment consideration. I don't know the regulatory framework around that or the statutory framework around that, so of course Department of Justice would have to weigh in on that, but I'd certainly ask for your consideration. The other thing is, my understanding is the pipeline impacts 4 counties, and given the challenges for folks to travel, I would certainly request that the department make the consideration of having a hearing or meeting in every single one of the counties.
Governor Brown, we actually looked at that. We couldn't find a location for the 4th county, but we'll take another run at that when we come back and plan ahead. And I will tell you, it's a significant burden and cost to the department to go out to do the public comment because we have to have so many staff. We need to take public testimony. We need to have it transcribed. So we already contracted with a transcription service to do that. Having been a former court reporter, I know those costs can get high, but we our really crackerjack fiscal staff has worked out a contract that I think will serve us well. We need to have staff available to take all the testimony, the oral testimony, and we need to have staff present. I say it's a burden. The agency is happy to do it, but it does take an incredible amount of time, and we have to put ourselves up in hotels as we travel to do it. But we will certainly look at trying to find a location that will work for everyone.
Thank you. The last, having had, I know that my staff has had meetings with a number of the tribes recently. I believe there are at least 4 tribes directly impacted: Coquille, Coos, Cow Creek, and Klamath, and would certainly ask the department to ensure that there is ample opportunity for the tribes to participate and weigh in.
Governor, we are very aware of that. I have already met with the Coos Loramqua Siuslaw early on, and I'll be meeting with each of the other tribes, but we'll also make, this is another reason why we're doing Klamath Falls, so the Klamath tribe can attend. Coos Bay, there's 2 tribes there, and then Canyonville. We were actually citing the hearing at the casino.
Okay, great, thank you. Secretary Richardson, any comments? Okay. All right. All right, so we have a list of about 24 folks signed up. We have, my proposal is that we provide each person with 1 minute. The other option is to give the first half or the first 15 or so 2 minutes. We've got another appointment following this meeting, so I'm open to board members if you have any thoughts.
I think that.
Okay, all right, let's go ahead and get started. Jason, I'm gonna let you.
Director Walker, could somebody pull a 3rd chair up to the
Thank
podium so we can pull 3 testifiers at a time? And I'll call who is up and then 3 to be prepared on deck. Carolyn Partridge, Lee DeVoe, and Eoin Soren first, and on deck, Katie Brainerd, Linda Heil, Carol Shearer, and forgive me for any mistakes. I'll show time and keep time. And feel free to cede your time to somebody else if you're echoing something that's already been said.
So is it 1 minute or 2 minutes?
1 minute.
1 minute? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, Governor Brown, Secretary Richardson, Treasurer Reed, and Director Walker. My name is Carolyn Partridge, and I very much appreciate the chance to be able to speak, even if only for 1 minute. And I'm here to tell you about my concerns regarding the Jordan Cove Energy Project. I read the climate reports that are coming out from NASA, from NOAA, from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, from the Union of Concerned Scientists, and even from the U.S. military. They are filled with doom and gloom. I wonder how this affects the psyche of our children. I wonder if their world will be half as beautiful as the one that was bequeathed to me. In my opinion, the South Oregon coast is one of the most precious spots in the state. My family goes there because of the excellent birding opportunities. We enjoy eating the fresh oysters from the bay and hiking along the inland streams and rivers. The scale of this project, the huge scale of this project, will destroy bird habitat and disrupt migration patterns. The birds aren't going to like this. So there will be fewer birds, and it will become an unsightly and hazardous place to watch them. We will skip it altogether. People go out in nature so they can get away from the doom and gloom in the world. They do not go to see pipelines. Oh.
Thanks, Carolyn. Lee?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Lee DeVoe. I'm a volunteer with 350 Eugene. I'm here speaking for myself. I'm here to express my concern about DSL agreeing to JSIP's request for suspension of the permit process. If I understand correctly, the difference between suspension and extension is that there's no set date for when they're going to come back. I'm concerned that the company is just playing for time and really stringing the state along, waiting for more favorable regulations to come out of FERC. And already we see that the federal agency, the BLM, has put out what is a biased and basically propaganda video in support of the project. and without waiting for the process to unfold and for public comment. And so I really caution DSL and SLB to make sure that they produce all their materials in a timely manner. Thank you.
Ewan?
Good morning. My name is Eowyn Saran. To echo Carolyn, I am very concerned as a 20-year-old that will see the worst effects of climate change in the upcoming future. I'm very concerned about the impacts of this pipeline on Oregon's climate, that it's a move in the wrong direction, the direction we've been continuing in towards non-renewable energy and fossil fuels. And I might add that I would like to see clean energy. I know the investment that goes into that, but for the sake of my generations in the future, I ask that DSL consider the permits, possibly deny them, because this pipeline is a step in the wrong direction and will damage Oregon climate and contribute to climate change.
Thank you. Katie, Linda, and Carol, you're up. Jim New, Nam Bailey Kraft, and Ron Wallace, you're on deck.
My name is Katie Brainerd, and I've been a lifelong resident of Oregon my whole life, and I am really concerned about this pipeline going through, especially for the ecological impacts and the 400 wetlands and waterways that this pipeline will threaten, as well as the 9 endangered species that could potentially go extinct due to the clear cutting of forest and vegetation that is necessary for the diversity and resiliency of this state. I am proud to come from a state that upholds wildlife conservation, and I want to continue to be part of this state, and the Pacific Northwest is my home, and so I would like to see these permits denied.
Thank you. Linda?
My name is Linda Heil from Eugene, Oregon, 350 Eugene. I'll start cutting to the chase by saying that we fully understand that there are very few opportunities, if any, for the board's direct action regarding Jordan Cove, but your influence is great. We see this as an opportunity to speak to both the board and to DSL, and so this is why we come. It's curious that regulations require DSL to examine the effects of Jordan Cove project on the land under the bay, while DEQ examines the effects of the water in the bay, because we all know that the two together and the life they support operate as one ecosystem, awesome in its complexity and its fecundity. And the fundamental question is why? It's a basic moral question where your influence can be great. Why should a private corporation, a 4-in-1 at that, be allowed to rip out the bottom of the bay that belongs to the people of Oregon? Why would Oregon stand for the ruinage of this natural resource, especially when the state rightly recognizes that the remaining time for fossil fuels is so short? Thank you.
Carol?
I'm Carol Scheer. The Department of State Land obligations and authorizations regarding Jordan Cove Terminal and Pacific Connector Pipeline, number 31 by my count. It is difficult to learn the status of various authorizations, including whether those granted during previous unsuccessful attempts to have the terminal and pipeline permitted are in effect, even though the project was denied. Your assistance in helping us protect the public interest by providing a central source of current factual information of the permitting status and process will help us protect our state from the taking of our amenities. The fossil fuel industry will not draw global talent with a universalist outlook. Socially minded business people and investors will start to look elsewhere. Our state will be viewed in a dark new light. The sooner a permit is denied, the better for our state. Please put Oregon on the path with forward-looking businesses and deny a permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, Nam, Ron. On deck, Pamela Driscoll, Robin White, and Sam Krupp.
Governor, Secretary, and Treasurer, my name is Jim New. I'm a member of 350 Eugene. Before I retired 6 years ago, I was a facility maintenance supervisor for the Berkeley Marina. This is a city-owned 1,200 berth marina. On Friday, March 11, 2011, there was a magnitude 9.0 megathrust undersea earthquake off the Pacific coast of Japan that created a tsunami that devastated their coastline and sent a series of waves 5,400 miles across the Pacific Ocean towards the west coast of North America. We stood on a jetty at the mouth of the marina and watched a wave no more than 1 foot in height and stream into the marina. We then heard the groan of docks tweaking and the snap of wooden piles as the rush of water filled the marina. You could hear the strain of wood, metal bolts, and steel braces of infrastructure resist the forces of water hydraulics. It was a haunting sound of man-made flotation breaking down by such a small wave that astounded all of us. I tell you this because Pembina, a Canadian pipeline company, proposes to build a liquefied gas plant on the banks of Coos Bay within 130 miles of a similar earthquake thrust fault as Japan on the Cascadia subduction zone. Geologists predict this fault could erupt within 30 to 50 years, and the governor and the legislative body has warned the citizens of this state to prepare for this event. The proposed Jordan Cove project would be built on a 40-foot of fill susceptible to liquefaction. There are many reasons to deny this project. Thank you. This is one of them.
You can also give us written testimony. Thank you.
Secretary Richardson, Treasurer Reed, Governor Brown, it's a pleasure to be here today. School is out. I'm a teacher, so I can be here. I speak to students about what this gentleman has mentioned, the terror that I feel having this potential plant on an earthquake zone. School children understand this is a terrible idea. A gentleman came up yesterday for the Poor People's Campaign from Coos Bay. They are working really hard, and he asked me personally if I would mention the plant that we dare not build this. Would be the biggest mistake that Oregon has put forth if it was built. Please deny any extensions or even any permits. And my name is Nan Baker Croft. Sorry for my handwriting.
Good morning. I'm Ron Wallace, Eugene, with the Sierra Club, and I'm here to talk about the fact that we all know that fossil fuel is on its way out. The renewables are the only chance we've got for the future. This project will make it very bad for the fossil fuel to continue. I'd like you to think about our legacy here in Oregon. Do we want to be known for perpetuating the negativity of fossil fuels, or do we want to be seen for future generations as making decisions now that will make it possible for the next generations to live on this earth? Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Pamela, Robin, and Sam, you're up. Jabrilla, Liz, and Thomas, Liz Hyde, and Thomas Ellis on deck.
Hi, my name is Pam Driscoll, and I live in Dexter, Oregon. I'm really looking forward to a day where I don't have to wear red about something I'm against, but maybe green for something I'm for, like wind turbines, which would put a lot of welders to work. I understand that's what a lot of the jobs, the temporary jobs, would create. The Oregon Department of Geology and Minerals agree this should not be built. Oregon State Chief Geologist found more than 50 instances where the company's claims were misleading, unsubstantiated, or contradicted the latest science. This would put more than 16,000 people in Coos Bay at risk. The Coos estuary would be negatively impacted and hundreds of water bodies threatened. Northwestern tribes are either in neutral about it, or the Klamath tribes, Yurok tribe, the Kuruk tribe, the Round Valley Indian tribes are all against this. It threatens tribal resources, fisheries. They're opposed because of climate change, the greatest threat to humanity. We need to be on the right side of history. And in the end, our society will be defined by not only what we create, but what we refuse to destroy. John Sawhill, president of the Nature Conservancy. Do the right thing.
Hi, my name's Robin White. Just for a little background, I've been in commercial fishing, commercial diving, emergency medical services, union president, union leader, so on and so forth. So I've done a lot of lobbying. I kind of know the way things run. In response to the director's statements, yes, that is her purview to operate those permits. But I think, as you're finding out here today, you've been talking about the Elliott State Forest. You've been talking about the Portland Harbor Superfund site, which I work on. You talk about these things and what the real costs of these programs are, what the real costs of these fossil fuel projects are long term. That's what you're responsible for every day, Governor. Everybody on this board is responsible for that. And so it is your responsibility to determine what goes on with those permits. You know, we're looking at forest fires. We're looking at the places where these are going through, that there's already been forest fires, and what happens to our fish, our lampreys, the rest of that situation, and what it's going to cost us in the long run. Every woman is born with every egg they're ever going to have. This stuff is cumulative. You know, how is that not considered in what we do when it's damaging the actual genome of the human race and everything else? We need to start thinking about this. I wish I had a longer minute, but thank you for your time.
We can accept written testimony as well.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Samantha Kropp. I am an organizer with Cascadia Wildlands. I'm also a high school teacher, and the topic that I teach is civics. So today I want to talk about democracy, because we're all here because we believe in the democratic process, we believe in the civic process, but there are many reasons why our belief in that process is being shaken, and one of them is because we have to wait through an hour-and-a-half meeting in order to give a minute comment. And we have people here, youth here, indigenous people who've been coming, landowners who've been coming, people of all stripes, your constituents who are here to give comment on this concerning project for months, actually for 10 years if you consider the lifeline of this project. And we're concerned that the democratic process is not serving us, is not hearing us, and is not allowing us to make meaningful change. And so when we hear things like the DSL is not going to allow State Land Board authorization to consider this project because it's not considered controversial or unusual enough, although we've been here saying that this project is indeed controversial, unusual, and extremely concerning, that is a reason to question the validity of our democracy. And so we're asking you to show us that our faith in this democratic system is well placed by allowing us to speak and allowing us to know that we are heard, and showing us that you're going to consider what we're saying and do something about it. Thank you.
Jabrilla, Liz, and Thomas Ellis, you're up. Tama Devers, Michael Sherman, and Joe Chambers on deck.
Oh, good morning. My name is Jabrilla Vaya, and I live down south of here, but I've been an organic farmer for 40 years. I live close to the land. I depend on this earth, as we all do. It's time to listen. We can talk science, we can talk politics, but it's time to listen to what's happening. I teach at my farm the children that come. We have lots of field trips, and I talk about the ecosystem and the intact ecosystem that we need to keep. We're breaking it, we're hurting it. The water is life, earth is life, the rock is life, the air is life. You cannot deny this. We must take a step outside of this intellectual head, this body of requirements, and listen. Listen to the indigenous people, listen to the tribes, and respect the tribal land and the sacred land. All land is sacred, and I just ask you to really, really listen and walk toward the safety of the earth for my children, all our children, our grandchildren, and our grandchildren's grandchildren.
My name is Elizabeth Hyde, and my family is a landowner in the town of Camas Valley, southwest of Roseburg. It is in the Oregon Coastal Management Zone, which is supposed to be a protected area. So our biggest concern is the 485 streams and rivers this huge pipeline crosses, including the middle fork of the Coquille River, which is on our farm. It's a fish-bearing stream, and the impact it will have on the environment and the habitat around it. The manner in which the company, Pacific Connector, proposes to lay the pipe across the body of water is reckless, and in fact, the area across the river is solid sandstone, and they will be digging all of that up and laying the pipe directly across the river Well, I'm sorry. Anyhow, we're very concerned about it. We've been fighting it for 10 years. We're tired of it. This is not on our bucket list in our retirement. But anyhow, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Ellis. I'm a retired English professor, just recently moved back here to Salem. Because of the time limitation, I'll focus on just a few parts of these written comments that I've also submitted. First of all, I'm concerned that this pipeline is going to carry fracked liquid natural gas across no fewer than 485 rivers, streams, and water bodies on both public and private lands. All of these waterways and the communities and natural areas downstream of them will be directly threatened by any rupture or leakage that occurs along the route. And if you followed the news, you know that leakages of these new pipelines are commonplace. They're happening all the time, and they have catastrophic results every time. But even if, in the unlikely event that no accident ever occurs, the turbidity caused by the construction of the pipeline will in itself damage these waterways and imperil their riparian ecosystems and fisheries. In addition, blasting for pipeline construction will also destroy trees and vegetation along the streams, increasing erosion and turbidity and endangering wildlife and recreational users. And finally, on a personal note, I wish to, okay, time is up. We need the moral courage to turn away from fossil fuel dependency now. Thank you very much.
Toma Devers, Michael Sherman, and Joe Chambers, you are up. Molly Bolt, Becky Lipton, and Carolyn McLaughlin, you're on deck.
Hello, my name is Toma Devers. I grew up in Southern Oregon. I grew up on the banks of the South Umpqua, the Rogue River, and the Coos Bay, and everything in between. These rivers are sacred. They're very wild. There's teeming life there, and we need to protect these places. The impact to the Klamath tribes and the Yurok and Kurok tribes is immense. You know, the Klamath tribe has openly stated they're opposing this pipeline due to the fact that it's going to go through their burial grounds and it's going to impair their fishing rights due to their dwindling salmon populations and the impact that building this pipeline and a leak from the methane gas would cause. Also, by the way, we noticed in Salem we have a water crisis here, and we are at the foot of another record-breaking summer and fire season, and we have the big one coming. So how can we be sensibly speaking about putting a pipeline through our sacred Oregon waters? We need to protect what water we have left for future generations. We really need to be thinking about this. And you know what? By the way, the Pacific Connector pipeline would be the biggest fossil fuel emitter. And you know, this water crisis in Salem is more than likely caused by climate change that has produced extremely hot temperatures, producing the algae bloom that you have currently in your city, the state capital. Thank you very much.
I can barely talk because I can't drink water because of the water here in this beautiful building. And but I need to talk, and thank you so much for listening, Governor Brown. Vicki Walker. Tobias Reed and Secretary Richardson. I'm a psychotherapist in Eugene, and more people are coming in anxious, depressed, multiple miscarriages, physical problems, autoimmune, cancers, fibromyalgias. We're in a climate collapse. We cannot do this. This is a moral and ethical thing that we're looking at, and it's not just another project. This is the end of fossil fuel time. It's their last grab. This is the time to do the right thing, the moral and ethical, the right thing. Thank you.
Governor Brown, I heard you speak at the Roadmap to the Outdoors Symposium, so it's good seeing you again. To the board, my name is Michael Sherman, and I live in Eugene, and I'm here representing myself today. And I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to comment and to be here. I'm here to show opposition to the Pacific Connector pipeline, but also to show support for the careful management of our natural resources and the landscape of the people, or the landscape of this state that the people are so connected to. The more I've learned about this pipeline and export terminal, the more I feel compelled to be here today. Many of the other people have listed numerous reasons as to why the project is detrimental to our state, its people, and our environment. I would like to encourage all the members of this board to look at the larger long-term effects of the Pacific Connector pipeline. I understand that timing is key with everything in life, which is why I hope that you have been remaining somewhat silent on this subject. When the time does come, I encourage you all to make a decision keeping in mind the greatest good for everyone and our planet. Thank you.
Molly Bolt, Becky Lipton, Kaylin McLaughlin, you're up. Rick Rappaport, Lori Doherty, and Harnett Cook, you're on deck.
Good morning to the board and director. My name is Molly Bolt from Dexter, Oregon. I'm an arborist and a small farmer. My family moved to Oregon specifically because of the environment. I believe that our conservation efforts are the greatest inheritance that we can gift to our children. I brought my homeschooled son today with me in case you need a reminder of whom we are making decisions for. If the state approves the project and pipeline, it is only a matter of time until we experience an adverse event. Pipelines leak. The question is when, not if. And whether it endangers Coos Bay, protected wilderness areas, or family farms, why are we willing to trade our well-being for corporate profit? In addition to potential catastrophe, the project harms local citizens by using eminent domain to benefit foreign corporations, by disregarding tribal sovereignty, by clear-cutting national forest, and by impacting 32 protected species, especially in marine and riparian zones. The economic benefits, 150 jobs, and the fees or taxes are very underwhelming given the social cost. If Oregon is to maintain its commitment to the Paris Climate Accords and just generally act ethically, we need to only approve projects that make environmental and economic sense.
Hello, my name is Becky Lipton. I'm from Springfield, and Governor, thank you to the board and the department, the DSL. Governor Brown, you and several prominent leaders of Oregon have traveled to Bonn, Germany, to tell the entire world that Oregon is committed to decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. And that we are supporting the Paris Climate Agreement. So, Governor Brown, protecting the environment consists of more than words and photo shoots. It involves action. This project would be the greatest greenhouse gas emitter in the entire state of Oregon. Washington and California have said no to this project, and we must also say no. Please consider the future for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Kaylin McLaughlin and I'm from Eugene. This pipeline is an issue that is very important to me. It's a topic that I frequently discuss with others, and it is truly an honor for me to be here for the first time and share my opinion with actual decision makers. I'm here as a young person to share with you not only my voice, but also the voices of my peers. I'd like to reiterate one of the foundational principles of this country and the free world, which is our government for the people and by the people. The United States federal government is widely known to be failing us, and they demonstrate this by consistently ignoring the interests of the people and instead favoring the incredibly powerful corporations and industries of the past. Humankind is amazingly adaptable, and the environment is less so. This is the time now to either act or succumb to climate change. In conclusion, I urge you to use your decision-making power and influence to encourage new sustainable markets and jobs to grow. They will attempt to dazzle us with their flashy pocket change, keeping us fixated and loyal. I beg of you to stay loyal to the people of Oregon and deny these permits for this monstrous pipeline once and for all. Thank you.
Rick Rappaport, Lori Doherty, Harriet Cook. Go ahead.
Governor Brown,
Secretary Richardson and Treasurer Reed, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Laura Doherty. I live here in Salem. I moved here nearly 7 years ago from Boston, Massachusetts, and liquefied natural gas is imported into Boston. I've seen those ships. They are huge. They dwarf the inner harbor of Boston. No other traffic is allowed to move while a loaded ship is coming through. It's a homeland security extravaganza. I was curious about what this would mean for, for Southern Oregon coast, for Jordan Cove and the Coos Bay estuary, and I did a little research. I found that a typical LNG ship is 950 feet long, and many are larger. And I believe that the Coast Guard has permitted at least that level of ship for Jordan Cove. Out of curiosity, I looked at the Capitol on Google Maps and with my bike computer, measured it out. 635 feet. So one of those ships is 1.5 times as big as as long as our Capitol building, and they project 110 to 120 of these ships a year. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you all for sitting through and listening to us, and thank you for the work that you do for this state. My name is Harriet Cook. I'm from Portland, Oregon, Portland 350 PDX, and an inhabitant of planet Earth for the last 61 years. And I first want to endorse every opinion that is against the pipeline and the Jordan Cove project that has been articulated before me. And I'd like to bring your attention to a book called Enough is Enough: How to Build a Sustainable Economy on a Finite Planet by Dietz and O'Neill. This book not only talks about the problem of the climate, but there are 8 other critical and ecological issues that we're up against. I would like to encourage the Oregon State to do an accounting not only of our finances, but our ecology, because that's the foundation of our economic system. The book includes financial alternatives that are out of the box. Enough is Enough by Dietz and O'Neill. Thank you.
Thank you. Please find me to submit written testimony if you have it. That's the end of testimony.
Anything else to come before the land board? I want to say thank you to Secretary Richardson and Treasurer Reed for staying to listen to testimony. And unless the director has anything else, we're going to adjourn the land board meeting.
I have nothing.
Okay.
Governor, thank you.
We're adjourned.